I'm going to call the meeting to order at 6 o'clock, guys. Welcome to the February meeting of the school board. I'd take a minute. Tonight, we need roll call.
Sorry about that. Ms. Parker? Ms. Kinzer?
Present.
Ms. Hopkins? Mr. Fulbright?
Here.
Mr. Moore is present. Mr. Atkinson? Mr. Sims?
Here.
Mr. Beaver?
Here.
Mr. Howell?
Here.
Ms. Morency?
Here.
Mr. Dudley? We have 7 present. We do have a quorum.
Okay, thank you. Baker School will not lead us in the pledge tonight, so the school board will lead you. So won't you stand and we'll have the Pledge of Allegiance and then a moment of silence. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. The first order of business is to adopt the agenda, and I'd like to add to the agenda under finance, and it would be at 8.1, a discussion of the recent issues with W-2, and also add Scott Lindsay to that discussion as well, so we can have answers of questions we might have about everything that's happened in the last week, and Doug and Scott can talk about it and answer any questions, if that's all right. Any other changes to the agenda?
Motion to approve as amended.
All right. There's a motion to approve as amended. Is there a second? Mr. Fulbright seconded. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Let me just say this too. We do not have the electronic voting again, but we're going to try to get through this without using ballots because that's so awkward, and I don't think, perhaps there's not that much business that we can't do that. Next is recognition and announcements. I don't know of anything there, so MCEA, you're next.
Good evening, Chair Kinzer and elected board members. Wow, that's about all I can say this week. It's been an interesting and frustrating week in for Marin County employees and what they've experienced. In all honesty, though, it's been a really frustrating 4 years. Murray County school employees have experienced in the past 4 years issues getting paid on time, having supplemental benefits paid in a timely manner, causing the loss of benefits for some. Having supplemental benefit companies change midstream with no communication, a barrage of issues with leave balances which still have not been corrected. This in addition to our job, educating children, which involves more than just book learning these days. We show up and do it daily without up-to-date textbooks, without adequate technology to supplement when textbooks are not available, with minimal increase in pay, what feels like minimal support and even less respect, as members of the community continue to address our failures throughout the community and on social media. Employees thought they could get some reprieve with the 81 Act, and now we are having issues this past week with W-2s being correct. Then after having to get the corrections for W-2s, people are finding they're having issues filing their taxes, saying there are errors. And that's just, I don't know what those issues are, and I've asked them to go to contact the county finance office. Well, the 8881 Act is in place. We've heard nothing of concern for the employees of Murray County Public Schools from our leadership in Murray County Public Schools. Whether it is doing, it is the school system is doing this time, surely they can understand the frustration and reach out to their employees and say something, but we've heard nothing. Everyone understands innocent mistakes, but each and every time there's an error, the burden, the injury seemingly falls on the employees of Murray County Public Schools with little accountability or communication. I have to say Mr. Laconin has been receptive and open and answered anyone's emails that I'm aware of, and has acknowledged his error in several emails sent to all Murray. However, our school system has trouble recruiting teachers. There are positions that sit vacant for long periods of time. We are getting ready to have a search for a director while we are still having issues with leave balances. We have a budget season coming up, and we have this. How will we recruit, or more importantly, how are we going to continue to retain our highly qualified and highly effective teachers in Murray County? As I met with board member David Moore last week, he charged MCA and teachers to hold the board accountable. Well, here we are asking for accountability, whether it's on your part or the county's part. How can we work together to find a productive and positive solution to assure that these errors get addressed? The employees of Murray County can go about the business of educating all our children without concern about our leave and compensation. Thanks again for always opening the floor to MCA and address the concerns of our members, and I really do hope that there can be a solution where we don't have to continually, year after year, after year after year, continue with these issues that we should not have to worry about as employees. Thank you.
Thank you, Jennifer, and I appreciate that you kept the dialogue. Oh, I know it's been a difficult week. We share your concerns, and hopefully tonight that we will be able to have some answers to those questions as well, going forward. Anyone else? Okay. Public delegations? Can somebody? None? Okay. John Micah is not here. He's sick, so we'll put Baker off to another time that he can talk about his wonderful school. Consent items. Is there a motion to accept the consent items? Mr. Moore made the motion to approve. Is there a second? Mr. Fulbright seconded. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? That motion passes. That brings us to new business, and that is finance. So, Mr. Laconin, you're up.
Good evening. Communication was sent out this past week detailing the events that occurred pertaining to Social Security and Medicare withholdings since Tuesday, and as updates unfolded, information was sent out detailing the error that occurred, what we were doing to fix it, the options that we had to stay within the legal parameters, and how we fixed the problem and how we're going to continue to review what was done. I would like to say that I'm not perfect. I never want to portray myself as a perfect human being. I take full responsibility of the error. I instructed the payroll accountant to change that box without full detail review like I normally do, in a hurry to try to fix something before the first payroll of the year, and it was incorrect guidance. So I also want to apologize for the employees of Murray County Public Schools that will receive some inconvenience from this error, particularly people that are going to file amended tax returns because they did their tax return in the half a day that communication was not sent out, and I want to apologize for that. We did work hard to get the W-2C forms out to employees before January 31st. We got those out. My office will continue to work hard for the employees of Murray County Public Schools and learn from our mistakes and get better as we go along. I also would like to say that the next steps is I'm meeting with a CPA tomorrow to review all of the information and everything that was filed. If there are adjustments that are needed at that time, I will inform everyone of any adjustments. This is my first time making this error, and so I came up with a plan, did research, and fixed it as best I could, and got the W-2Cs out as quick as we could and as accurately as we could, touching every individual employee of the 1,800. But I want a second opinion on this. I want to second read over what we did so that we can feel good about the correction that we made and that we did right by the employees. So currently today we calculated all the deductions that we need to run through payroll through 7/31 for each employee. I've also sent out multiple Excel sheet requests to employees that wanted to know what the deduction would be going forward. So I know that the email I sent was detailed and long and was a lot of accounting jargon in there. So if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer any questions at this time. We have been fielding an enormous amount of emails one-on-one. I've also sent another All Murray out today, and you know, we're just going to keep trying to do better, learn from this mistake. We've implemented a review process that our other payroll accountants use each payroll to catch this error, and it won't happen again.
First question that I have is, it's around $303,000, right?
I think $303,940, I believe.
How will the 201 and 2012s in budget, I mean, are we going to have to cover that with fund balance, or?
This was a pre-budgeted line item. This was factored into our budget because we expect to pay all of the Social Security and Medicare associated with retirement funds. So this is a planned for expense by the employer. The employee portion, you can only collect from people who are here, who are being paid. So there were 218 employees that had left, and for those we had to choose option 2 to make sure they had a correct W-2. So we had to choose that option to make sure that their W-2 was correct, and that was really the only unplanned thing that occurred, and the amount was minimal.
Are there any other questions for Mr. O'Connor and Mr. Beaver?
Thank you, ma'am. Mr. McCona, you know, I know, when did this actually take place?
It was January of 2019, towards the middle of the month when the deduction was changed. I was traveling between offices at the time, and I was moving a lot. We were working a lot. We were building processes, but it was in January of 2019, and I caught it Tuesday, and said, "Oh crap!"
Yeah.
And had some "oh crap" moments, and came up with an "oh crap" plan, and then we got around to getting the documents out.
Okay. But when you were traveling back and forth, did you have a full staff?
I did not. I was in charge of employees that at the time technically weren't being paid by Murray County government, were not technically under my direction, but I'd place no blame on them. The payroll accountant did exactly as I asked.
Well, you know, I'm not wanting to point blame, point fingers at anyone, you know, but, you know, all of us know that during that time that you were stretched very thin. And and I can understand how something could happen. Of course, because it did happen, you know, we got to make it correct, make it right.
I would just like to say that, you know, that there's a lot of things I could get up here and say, but, you know, an excuse doesn't fix anything. True. And I think admitting the problem and looking at the mistake as deep as possible, and if you learn the hard way, you learn it to never do it again when you learn the hard way, and this is the hard way. So.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Fulbright?
Thank you very much. Just going back to when we had issues, not this time, but the previous time, wasn't that a result of a system change at that point?
Which of the issues?
When people weren't getting paid and getting paid the wrong thing?
That was changed from local government to Skyward, and I believe there was some turnover. I might defer that question to Dr. Marzak.
Well, just in general, I mean, it was because we changed system of some sort. Don't get into the details, I don't care. Then this time we were changing systems from 2 separate entities. Were we still in that transition phase that we had planned into the 81 Act? We were still, because I know there was a time when we were overlapping the way things were being done. Did this happen during that overlap time?
That's correct. Yeah.
Okay. My only other question would be, as we go forward looking at a new administration for our school system, is it a given necessarily that that new administration would want to put in a new accounting system again? Or is that something that falls squarely through your office with that kind of a decision?
That's through my office for
So
that
we're not
decision.
looking at having somebody new come in and having a new system then another year later? 'Cause I think that's what we
Yeah.
really need to get past. All these changes are changes to systems, human error, da-da-da-da-da-da. Appreciate you taking responsibility for it. I think that's vital. I think that reassures a lot of staff members who are affected. But I also think hearing that we're not gonna be changing again in a year, and then another year, and then another year, I think that that's the more comforting thing that we need to keep in mind. So thanks for what you're doing. Just keep us well informed, and you have been doing that, and I appreciate it.
Thank you. Doug, just two questions on that. I think you've covered most of the rest of the stuff. Did I hear you say correctly that you do now have some processes in place to address this, to keep it from happening again?
That's correct. We have 3 payroll teams, really. We have a food service, we have a county, and then we have a county BOE. And there are review processes that are run every single payroll on those particular parts. As you know, those had good W-2s go out. And it's as far as just running a W-2 report and ticking and tying your numbers and making sure that everything's being deducted properly. That was a process that was instructed to be implemented and hadn't been implemented yet because they were treading water. You know,
Okay.
they were kind of behind the ball, and getting payroll out was an accomplishment, let alone on top of more. So I'll be speaking with the Financial Management Board towards this, but I may be looking at one additional staff member this upcoming year.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. The other question I have, just to make sure, I mean, I know this is kind of wide open, but do you have any expectations if there's anything additional, any kind of additional fallout from this, or do you feel like you've identified what the issue is in its entirety and you're just kind of wrapping up maybe the details of that, but there's no additional things that you feel like may be missed here?
Why I want to review with a CPA is because I want to track my steps and make sure that what we did was truly correct. I do feel good about it. I do feel like I came up with a good plan. I do feel like I followed IRS guidelines. I don't think that this has all the likings of an audit finding or an IRS penalty for late tax deposits or interest, because I've researched how to do that when an error was discovered over a year, So I've researched that, and I feel good about how I treated it because I took it from the IRS. But at the same time, I would feel more comfortable with another person in my field reviewing my work.
Well, I guess as a board member, and clearly this would be up to the rest of the board, I would appreciate, and I've talked about this in the past on other issues, I would appreciate a debriefing kind of when we get to that point, when you feel like the dust is settled. I would like for us to maybe revisit this one more time and kind of talk about what you really found out, if there's anything new that pops up as far as, and I really appreciate, again, you've been forthright with this as far as I'm concerned. I do appreciate that. And, but I would like to kind of make sure that those processes are in place, both in your response, make sure those are satisfactory, that you feel like you guys responded appropriately. Seems like you have so far, but again, a couple weeks from now, maybe sit back down with your team and look at that and update those. But I would like, as a board, for us to maybe hear from that again when you feel like the dust is settled on it.
Can we put that on next work session? Because I'm speaking with the CPA. He's reviewed the documents. I talked to him over the weekend and sent him the documents on a private upload site, and he's ready to review tomorrow
whatever
afternoon.
time frame, I guess, you feel is appropriate, if it's the next work session or the next one. All right, thank you.
And to answer your question, at this time, I don't see any fallout that employees would be impacted by, because the amount's not going to change. What I do see as it could be, if I'm wrong, is maybe added inconvenience due to a correction that we have to do. But as far as money goes, no, I don't feel that there is any fallout.
Ms. Parker?
Mr. Laconin, I know we had talked about moving to Kronos. Will that have any impact going forward for our teachers?
it'll help with time management and time off and basically tracking time and then paying for work that was already completed. Right now, we're kind of in a current holding pattern. It won't really affect teachers as much due to how they're paid and that their salary, but a lot of the support staff will no longer have to turn in paper timesheets. Sub will be tracked, and they'll have digital timesheets as well, so that'll help. It'll help them get subs easier. I think it's a more user-friendly system, the Ready Sub in comparison to SmartFind Express. But really, Kronos is around the HRIS system that will help data come in correctly because the new onboarding employees, that information they apply through the system, so it carries the information they entered over into Kronos for when they become an employee. So it helps with data integration, and we can check that against an onboarding packet, and that'll import into our accounting software for payment. So it will help, but not specifically correcting like W-2 related issues. It's more of a timekeeping and HRIS onboarding system.
One complaint I feel like I've heard for years before you, but ever since we switched over to Skyward, is this whole we don't have our check, we don't have our pay stub. Is that something that in the future that your office is going to look at? Because when we're talking about W-2 right now, but we talked last month, I think, about the issues with leave being properly accounted for, which going forward, it sounds like we're trying to put processes in place with Kronos and whatnot to accurately account for that time. But in the past, we still have a big question mark, I feel like. And I know that's not necessarily your area, but I'm just curious if, particularly on the pay stub, if there's going to be a way for people to really verify what they're getting and have some confidence in the checks that they're receiving going forward.
Scott, why don't you come up and stand with him and together? Yeah.
The SmartFind system is currently where employees can find their current time off balance and a history of time that they've taken off. There's a report I've wanted in SmartFind since I've been looking at it, and that's a beginning balance as of a certain day report, so that you can go back in time and say, what was so-and-so's balance on July 31st of 2017? I wanted that, and when I contacted HR before Scott's time, they said, no, that report's not in there, and that's useful because what you could do is you can say, well, I know what they've taken because this is in SmartFind. So if I can find out what their beginning balance was back on when this first started, and we can see, that's what it was when the data came over and it was actually correct, then we can kind of go through about 4 years of data and get to somebody's supposed to be correct time. But Skyward isn't a reliable place to look at your time off right now. Those two systems aren't integrated. And so the pay stub that you would see, that if it has any time off balance on it, is incorrect because True Time was never implemented, and that's where the time is pulling from. So if you were to use that, then that wouldn't be the correct time off. You'd have to go to SmartFind. But for the future, Kronos would be a place to view all of your time off, and then you would have Skyward as your pay stub. Yeah. Go ahead, Scott.
Let me just say something. Scott, I've talked to Scott about going forward and about auditing because we've gotten a lot about leave and all of that, and that's important to our employees, and so I asked him to join us because a lot of the things we saw, even social media and going through this process, is one of the other many things that teachers have had to be concerned about. So I asked him, and together, I think working together, they're going to get this figured out. So why don't you speak to where we are with this?
Yes. Good evening, Board. Right now we do have a very big challenge, and confidence has eroded among staff. I mean, that's terrible, and that needs to be fixed. I took a step last week of sending out an all-Murray email to staff to begin to get their contracts correct, to make sure people have the correct contracts with the correct salaries, and to try to do this all in a condensed time period so we can see why are these contracts not correct. I speculate it's an onboarding issue, But we'll find out as people are now responding. I'm getting emails, and we'll begin to look at that and to try to start from there to make sure everybody's contract is correct. Part two is, as Mr. Lukonen mentioned, leave balances. Obviously, that is, terribly important to people to know how much time do I actually have off. That calculates also into retirement considerations. So what we're doing internally is looking at what systems we have now and how far back can we go with the systems that we have access to, and to, as Mr. Lukonen explained, look at the current systems we have and really painstakingly have to do almost individual research on all of these, which we're committed to doing, because we want to make sure this is correct for everyone. We don't want to have employees who are not confident that they have the correct pay, not confident that they have the right amount of time off. I take this personally very serious, and so we're going to, if need be, look at all of these cases individually, and it's going to take some time. We have a limited staff, so time is our enemy. But my goal has been, first, we're getting the contracts correct. I sent out an email asking for anybody who has an issue with their contract to let us know by February the 15th. And then from that point, hopefully it might take us a month, maybe a little bit less, to at least get all of the contracts corrected with the correct salary. Part two, somewhere in February, I'm going to send out another email about leave balances. Anybody who has a concern about their leave balances, they think their leave balances are incorrect, to notify us so we can begin that process of individually looking at people's leave balances. So that's going to be very taxing. Also, too, send an email to, if Ms. Ogg is still here. Okay. I sent an email to her last week. Your email said you were out. But I want to involve her because she represents a majority of our employees, which are teachers, and to have her at the table helping us with this. It's best to include the union because they are the voice of the majority of the teachers to try to help us figure out what's the best way to approach this. I'm not going to sit up here and say I have all of the answers, but I have a strategy of where we need to go, with the goal being that people have confidence in their pay, have confidence in their leave balance, and have confidence that their contracts are correct. So I don't know what else further to say other than that. And of course, we're working with Doug's team to work as a team to try to get this corrected.
I do have one small last thing is, and when it comes to pay stubs, we do get emails, hey, I can't get into Skyward, so we send the link back. We say, okay, here, we sent you a password reset link. Here's HR does this same thing too. We just both handle them when they come in, but and we make sure that they can get in there to view their pay stub or previous pay. But that's currently how that's being handled, and we will take guidance from the school board on any other way to receive a pay stub.
Ms. Parker?
Mr. Lukonen, Mr. Lindsay, I'm glad that you said that, Mr. Lukonen, because it sounds like if we're still having issues with Skyward 3 years later with people being able to get into it and get access to it, then maybe that was an issue in how it was implemented in the rollout of that. And I'm not sure, but Mr. Lukonen, you said that you're working on processes on your side. Mr. Lindsay, I just would hope that you can also update us on the processes that you're looking at, particularly with regards to onboarding and making sure that staff know how to get into Skyward, first off. Secondly, you mentioned that you were going to be doing individual accounting, try to go through each person's individual. I know Mr. Lukonen's had to do that. I know Vaco had to do it before that. We've had this issue for a while. I'm glad that you're being proactive in sending out emails and asking, employees to look at, their leave and their contract. But at the same time, I hope I don't feel like that is keeping you from doing the individual accounting side too. So I hope that those are going to work hand in hand, and that if an employee comes to you, but even if an employee doesn't come to you, that you're going to be reaching out to them and saying, hey, I've gone through it and I've noticed that this is incorrect. Because I think that will inspire confidence, boost morale, if we can show that your office is doing the same thing. And finally, the last thing that I would say that I've heard from multiple teachers is, because this is a big issue, the current hours for HR really just don't work for a lot of teachers. If central office closes at 4 o'clock and teachers get done at 3:30, and you know that this is a huge issue that lots of people are calling about, they can't get through. And so I don't know if y'all need to go out to schools. I don't know if y'all need to set up extended hours. I don't know. But this has been an issue for a long time, and I just hope that somehow we can figure out a way to get feedback from the teachers and have that dialogue, because if we close our doors at 4 o'clock and they can't get through, it's just going to repeat the next day. So that's one concern that I've heard from teachers that I hope you can address. Thank you.
Are there any other comments or questions? Excuse me.
Well, I wanted to say thank you for bringing that to my attention. That's one of the reasons why I wanted to involve the union, so I could hear feedback like that. We just don't want to approach this in a vacuum without hearing any type of feedback from our teachers. So I appreciate you sharing that with me, and we'll take all that under consideration. Thank you.
Okay, and thank you both for coming. I think teachers are just almost whiplashed from so many things happening. And so what they need now is action and then confidence, to gain confidence. And I hear what you're saying, and it sounds like you are on the right path. But the thing that's got to happen, excuse me, I didn't see your light just a second, is that this just cannot be a distraction anymore. They're paid to do a job, take care of our kids, cafeteria, support people, all of them. They should not have to worry about these things, and I know that's your goal as well. So I think going forward to create confidence, and it's just an action plan that needs to take place. Ms. Morency.
Can you just tell us what effect this error with the W-2s had on the teachers? How are we rectifying the problem?
So the effect it has on the teachers is, it's kind of really a three-part thing. So one is the deduction that's going to occur over the next 12 pay periods of Social Security and Medicare that should have been deducted in 2019. So with that said, a teacher or any employee really should have paid an average of $7.03 each pay during that last year. So we have 12 pays left, so the average employee is going to be paying back $14.06 per pay period. Now, that's money that they received extra in error in 2019 and that they will lose this year to even it out. There's that. The second thing is the few teachers or employees that filed their tax return in the half a day that they didn't have communication to not file their taxes. Those employees may have to pay an additional tax form cost. Depends on the software you use, depends on your tax preparer, but they could incur an additional cost that they didn't foresee for this year. And then really just the third thing was the amount of, the confusion of what is a W-2C, and, my office is trying our best to help rectify answer those questions for them and help them. When it comes to the tax preparation, when people, file their taxes, they've got questions, how do I enter this here? We're just trying our best to cover all our bases on that. So that's the impact. Technically, it's not a dollar out of the pocket of an employee that was unforeseen, that shouldn't have happened. I regret the error happened because it's basically just trading spaces. It's supposed to happen last year, now it's happening this year. And I made a joke earlier. It's probably not the joking time, but I don't know many places you can go to and get an interest-free loan. And, I'm thinking about it, we accidentally overpaid employees $7.03 every paycheck, and but I'm glad that, that it's coming out even, rather than us having to pay an IRS tax penalty or us having to pay IRS interest on those funds and then not having it affect us in our budgeting process, when I know the priority of the school board is the teachers and employees and the budgeting process of, giving everybody the tools they need as well to do their jobs. So I'm glad that is avoided, but I'm regretting that the mistake occurred in the first place.
Thank you both.
Thank you.
Sure, Mr. Fulbright.
You had alluded to if people had to refile, that there may be a fee associated with that.
That's correct.
Are we prepared to absorb that fee? Or is there with some, I mean, 'cause if we made a mistake, they don't need to be charged another filing fee. Do they I guess they would contact your office and let you know?
I have a list of the people that, in my email, that they emailed me and said, hey, I've already filed my return, and I had to say, I'm sorry, you'll have to file an amended, return. I mean, really, we've been emailed. Shifra, did you get anybody? 'Cause I got maybe a couple. So I think we're looking at between 5 and 10 people.
I just wanna make sure we're gonna do right by them.
Yeah.
'Cause I mean, if they need to, I don't know if the word's got out that if that happened and they were in that category, to contact your office and.
Yeah, we have been contacted of what do we do if it was more like a advice thing,
Okay.
what do we do if we've already filed them?
I just wanna make sure we're not making them pay for anything that was a result of us.
Well, if we need to do a budget amendment to,
I guess that's where I'm getting with my
yeah,
question.
we would need to do a budget amendment, and we'd be able to have, it needs to be for an amended return. We need to see that documentation before.
Right.
But
Okay.
it would
Yeah, I just
require
wanted
an
to
amendment
clarify
from
that.
this body.
Thank you, Doug.
Anyone else? Well, thank you so much. Oh, what? I think you can answer afterwards. You can speak to her afterwards, okay? All right, thank you. Under finance also, you'll see that, there's a budget amendment listed there. That's really the budget amendment for paying for TSBA. So just know that when we get to that point, which we're almost there, to advertise, use them as our research, entity, that would require a budget amendment, and then we'll discuss it at that point. So next is policies. There's nothing on instruction. Yes, Battle Creek, land boundary. So, sorry. I always get ahead of myself, I'm sorry.
Good evening. I apologize, they're using my computer to talk to Dr. Marzak, so I'm gonna give you a number, and I hope it's close to what you're looking at. We went back and had the plot redrawn with the land from Hummingbird all the way to Mainline Moore included in that. That brings that total land amount up to just a little bit over 98 acres. It's like 98.17, something like that. That still leaves us the amount of land we feel necessary for a future high school, but that does include the road, and that was the only addition we did to what you talked about and what you saw last week.
So I guess the question I have is, what action do we need to take with this to get this back over to the county commission?
Just a motion to approve it as the survey to be deeded.
Okay. So I'll make a motion to approve this, as the survey to be deeded. Thank you for wording that.
There is a recommended, motion on the rationale for it. Propose the boundary for the land to be deeded to the Murray County as proposal. Motion to approve, as a survey, as presented. Is there a second? Mr. Atkinson seconded the motion. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? That motion passes. All right, now we're ready for policies. There are no policies for final adoption, except for the trauma policy, which I think, we pulled off to discuss. Any discussion about?
Motion to approve policy 6.300.04.
All right, a motion to approve policy 6300.04 by Mr. Moore. Is there a second? Mr. Atkinson seconded the motion. Any discussion? Then we're ready to vote. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed? That motion passes. No? Excuse me, I didn't hear you. Okay. Is there any other noes?
Yeah.
Huh? Yes. Mr. Bieber voted as no, and Ms. Parker voted no. 2 noes, right. The motion does pass. Next on the agenda is the TSBA Superintendent Search Service, which we discussed, and you had the packets in our retreat. We discussed at the retreat option 2, which is $11,500. Is there any discussion?
Motion to approve.
Mr. Moore made the motion to approve Plan B in the amount of $11,500. Is there a second? I heard the second. Mr. Howell seconded the motion. Is there any discussion? Ms. Parker?
It's not really, discussion as much as it is a question on, with the budget amendment, how was that decided? Because I don't think we talked about that at the board meeting.
Chipper's ready to speak to that.
If y'all notice, it's not signed, so we're just waiting for information. I just took it out of fund balance because I was told to research the school's budget, the Board of Education budget for the board. Don't have a lot of funds in there. I looked at the superintendent budget that I was asked to, and there's not a lot of funds to pull from. The only other thing I could do is, instead of taking the full amount of fund balance, we could actually pick and choose, like, you know, say, hey, take 2,000 from here, take 1,000 from here, take 500 from here. But that's something that somebody from the board would have to actually sit down with us and say, I want you to take this out, but since it's not our budget, we can't pull from it. So that's why I left it right now as fund balance. Whatever you all decide to do, we can do that.
Mr. Atkinson?
I thought we was it's kind of a statement, I thought we was gonna work on this on Tuesday, was it the 14th? Or 10th,
On the
excuse me.
10th, they're coming to start the process of what we
Right.
would want them to advertise, and they would actually be on board.
Okay.
We asked them to come.
Mm-hmm.
They're in D.C., both Ben and Tammy. She did say, I sent y'all an email with her email address if you had questions.
Right.
I also had her phone number if you needed that, a call, and she would be willing to speak to anybody at any time if you have any questions. Any other discussion?
Chair
So-
Kinzer, oh, sorry.
Yes, Mr. Moore.
So I guess 2 things on that. And I know there were some additional, I'm not looking at it right now, but I think there were some additional options that may come up with some costs on top of that, if I recall reading that. If we wanted to expand the search, for example, in some other areas, I believe there were some costs. So my point to that is this something we could discuss further as far as where the money would come from at that date on the 10th? Because in my opinion, we may, when we discuss with TSBA, if we look to go some different directions that have some additional costs, frankly, this may end up being a little bit more money. I just want to make sure, as Ms. Parker's asking, we want to make sure we can find the money somewhere. But I just expect that we've already talked about some things that seem like they may add a little bit of cost to this, just based on the previous discussions we already had the other night. So I just didn't know if that was still built into this, if that is an option.
I don't think they're going to expect payment before that, and certainly we'd need to know if there were additional, so I think we could wait as far as the budget amendment, even wait to the work session to see about that.
I can go ahead and email you all a copy of the school board budget and the superintendent budget, and as you all see fit, just let us know and we can move the money the way you all want it to, because we don't touch any budgets for any departments unless we're authorized to do it, so.
Okay. So is that amenable with everybody? We want, the budget amendment will work. Mr. Fulbright?
Yeah, are we sure that they'll come down and meet with us on the 10th if we haven't committed to, use them?
I assume we're gonna vote on, we've got a motion and everything to vote on committing to them. The payment of it might be something we'll approve at a later date. Mr. Atkins?
I just kind of feel hard to vote on something like this right here without talking to them in person when they come down and having a special call meeting after we come down and talk to us. That's just kind of where I thought we was gonna go at, but it's gonna be hard for me to support this right here, right now, until I actually talk to them.
I don't know that they can give us any more information than Tammy gave us the other night, and, you know, the presentation in the book is pretty clear as to what they're gonna work with us, they're gonna seek the candidate that we are going to, talk about, discuss, and everything at that point, but of course, I mean, it's up to you all, for sure. Any other discussion? So the motion is to accept Plan B in the amount of $11,500, but we're not talking about a budget amendment or how to pay for it at this time. We may need to take a election, maybe, so. No. Okay, are you ready to vote? Can we vote by voice? Okay, all those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed? Nay. All right, is there another nay vote other than Nathan? Okay, then that's one nay vote, and the motion does pass. Now, we are going to have a meeting with them next Monday, and it'll be as a retreat. So it won't be it'll be a meeting similar that we had last time, where we can sit together, meeting in the sunshine. Everybody's welcome, but it will not be videotaped, or, you know, it won't have an agenda other than just to meet with them and start the process of moving forward. Okay, now, we're under other business. I lost my place here. We don't have any bids, do we? No. Motion to adjourn. I heard Ms. Parker first, and that means, Mr. Moore, you didn't make every motion tonight. All those in favor? All right.